Elon Musk sat in the back seat of his sleek Tesla, staring out the tinted window at the bustling city streets of Los Angeles. It was late evening, and the city was alive with neon lights and hurried footsteps. Despite his immense success, building rockets to colonize Mars, revolutionizing transportation, and amassing unimaginable wealth, Elon felt a void he couldn't quite name. For years, he had been driven by ambition, by an insatiable desire to push the boundaries of technology and human potential. Yet lately, the thought gnawed at him. What's the point if I'm still not happy? As the car came to a halt at a red light, Elon's eyes caught a peculiar scene. On a weathered park bench, a man sat hunched over, surrounded by an assortment of ragged belongings. A cardboard sign lay at his feet with the words, "I lost everything, but I found myself." Elon felt an inexplicable pull. On impulse, he told his driver, "Stop here." The billionaire stepped out, his polished shoes clashing starkly with the cracked pavement. He approached the bench, unsure of what he was looking for, but certain that he had to speak to this man. "Hi," Elon said awkwardly. "Mind if I sit?" The man looked up, his face weathered but kind, his eyes reflecting a depth of understanding that startled Elon. "It's a free bench," he replied with a shrug. As Elon sat, the man introduced himself as Sam. Once a successful small business owner, Sam had lost everything: his company, his home, his family, during a financial crisis. Yet instead of bitterness, there was an air of peace about him. Sam spoke with a quiet wisdom. "I used to think success was about how much I could own, how high I could climb. Then, when I lost it all, I realized I'd spent my whole life chasing shadows." Elon found himself drawn in. "And now? What do you live for?" "For the little things," Sam replied, smiling faintly. "The sound of the wind, the warmth of the sun. For the chance to connect with people, even strangers." For the first time in years, Elon felt truly present. This ragged man, with nothing to his name, seemed to possess a clarity that had eluded him despite all his accomplishments. As the conversation continued, Elon's phone buzzed incessantly in his pocket, reminders of meetings, emails, deadlines. But for once, he ignored it. He listened as Sam shared his story, each word peeling back a layer of Elon's carefully constructed armor. When Elon finally rose to leave, he felt something shift within him. "Thank you," he said earnestly. "For this." Sam nodded, his expression unreadable. "The hard part isn't hearing the truth, Elon. It's living it." As Elon returned to his car, he couldn't shake Sam's words. That night, as he lay in his penthouse, he stared at the ceiling, the questions swirling. What have I been chasing? And what have I missed along the way? Elon Musk woke up the next morning with a heaviness in his chest. Sam's words echoed in his mind like an unsolvable riddle. The man had nothing, and yet, somehow, he seemed to have everything Elon had been searching for. At breakfast, surrounded by assistants rattling off schedules and deadlines, Elon found himself distracted. His usual laser focus on productivity faltered, and by the time the first meeting began, he realized he hadn't absorbed a single word. By noon, he couldn't resist any longer. Elon stepped into his car, ignoring the confused stares of his team, and said to his driver, "Take me back to the park." Sam was still there, seated on the same bench, his cardboard sign propped up against his belongings. Elon approached cautiously, unsure if he would even be welcomed. "You're back," Sam said, a glimmer of surprise in his eyes. "I couldn't stop thinking about what you said," Elon admitted, sitting down. "About living the truth." Sam chuckled softly. "Most people don't come back. It's easier to forget than to face it." Elon hesitated. "How did you do it? How did you find peace after losing everything?" Sam leaned back, his gaze distant. "I stopped running from myself. When everything was stripped away, I had no choice but to face the man I'd become and decide if I could live with him. Over the following days, Elon began visiting Sam regularly, often in the evenings when the city was quieter. Their conversations felt like an oasis in Elon's otherwise chaotic life. One evening, Sam asked a question that caught Elon off guard. "Why do you do what you do?" Elon paused, his mind racing. "To make a difference. To push humanity forward." Sam tilted his head. "And do you feel you've done that?" "I have," Elon replied, but the words felt hollow even as he spoke them. "But it never feels enough." Sam nodded knowingly. "That's the trap, isn't it? The more you achieve, the more the bar moves. And the things that really matter, the people, the moments, you leave them behind." Elon thought of his strained relationships, the family dinners missed, the friendships that had faded under the weight of his ambition. A lump formed in his throat. One night, after a particularly grueling day, Elon visited Sam to find him surrounded by a small group of people. They were homeless, like Sam, and they seemed to look up to him as a sort of leader. Sam waved Elon over, handing him a paper plate of food. "Join us." Elon hesitated. He wasn't sure what he'd expected, but this wasn't it. The idea of sitting among strangers, of being just another face in the crowd, felt alien. But he sat. He listened as the group shared their stories, of loss, of resilience, of finding meaning in the unlikeliest of places. For the first time in years, Elon felt something he couldn't quite name: humility. After the others had left, Elon and Sam sat in silence. Finally, Sam spoke. "You're used to being the smartest person in the room, aren't you?" Elon smirked. "It's been known to happen." Sam's tone grew serious. "But when was the last time you truly listened? Not to prove a point, not to find a solution, just to understand." Elon's mind flashed to boardrooms, to debates, to interviews where he dominated with his ideas. He realized he couldn't remember the last time he'd simply listened. "Maybe I don't know how," he admitted. "Then start now," Sam said simply. As the days turned into weeks, Elon began to notice subtle changes in himself. He was more present in conversations, more patient with his team. Yet, a part of him resisted. Could he really afford to slow down? What would happen to his companies, his vision for the future, if he took his foot off the gas? One evening, as he left the park, Elon's assistant called. "Mr. Musk, the board needs a decision on the new factory location by tomorrow. Should we prioritize speed or cost efficiency?" Elon started to answer instinctively, but then stopped. "Let me think about it," he said, surprising himself. For once, he wanted to weigh the human impact, not just the numbers. The next morning, Elon visited Sam with a question of his own. "What would you do if you were me?" Sam smiled. "I wouldn't want to be you. Too much pressure." Elon laughed, a rare sound these days. Seriously, Sam's expression softened. "I'd remember that it's not about how much you build or how far you go. It's about why you're doing it, and who you're bringing with you." Elon left the park that day with a sense of urgency, not the frantic kind he was used to, but a quiet determination to realign his path. He knew the hardest part was yet to come. As Elon Musk left the park that evening, the city lights seemed less blinding, the noise of traffic less oppressive. For the first time in years, his mind wasn't dominated by launch schedules, quarterly reports, or the relentless march toward progress. Instead, he thought about Sam's words. "It's not about how much you build or how far you go. It's about why you're doing it and who you're bringing with you." Elon knew this realization wouldn't instantly solve everything, but it gave him a direction, a compass pointing toward a new way of thinking. Now came the hard part, putting it into action. Back at his office, Elon was met with a storm of urgent issues. Delays at a critical factory, backlash from an investor group, and a faltering deal with a government agency. His team scrambled for answers, offering quick fixes and compromises. But as Elon listened, he realized something. The solutions weren't aligned with the principles he'd been pondering. One of his executives, a sharp and pragmatic woman named Sarah, presented a proposal to cut costs by closing a smaller production facility in a struggling town. "It's the fastest way to save resources and keep the project on track," she explained. Elon hesitated. The decision made logical sense, but his thoughts drifted to the people in that town, workers who depended on that factory for their livelihoods. Was this just another step forward for the company at the expense of human connection? That evening, Elon returned to the park. Sam was there, as always, though this time he seemed to be expecting him. "You look troubled," Sam said, gesturing for Elon to sit. Elon explained the situation. "It's not just about money," he said. "It's about whether I'm making the right kind of progress." Sam nodded. "The right thing isn't always the easiest thing, Elon. Sometimes, you have to trust that putting people first will pay off in ways you can't measure." Elon sat in silence, letting the weight of the decision settle over him. "What would you do?" he finally asked. Sam smiled faintly. "I'd remember that progress is empty if it leaves people behind." The next morning, Elon stood before his executive team. "We're not closing the facility," he said firmly. The room erupted into murmurs of dissent. Sarah frowned. "Elon, with all due respect, this decision puts everything at risk." Elon met her gaze, his voice steady. "No, it doesn't. It aligns us with something bigger, something that people will remember long after this project is done. We'll find another way to cut costs, but not at the expense of the people who make this company what it is." The room fell silent. For once, Elon didn't feel the need to fill the space with justifications. He had made his choice. In the weeks that followed, the decision to keep the factory open sparked a wave of unexpected changes. Workers, inspired by the company's commitment to their town, began organizing volunteer programs to give back to the community. Investors, initially skeptical, saw the move as a testament to the company's integrity, which strengthened their support. Elon felt a shift within himself, too. He started making time for things he'd long neglected, calling his brother to talk about something other than work, attending a school recital for his kids, even spending quiet evenings reading instead of answering emails. One evening, Elon returned to the park with a thermos of coffee and an envelope. He found Sam in his usual spot, gazing at the horizon as the sun dipped low. "I made a decision," Elon said, sitting down beside him. Sam raised an eyebrow. "And?" "I put people first," Elon replied, "and it's already making a difference." Sam smiled, his eyes crinkling with approval. "Then you're starting to get it." Elon handed him the envelope. "It's not much, but I wanted to help." Sam opened it cautiously, revealing a check with an amount that made his eyes widen. "I can't take this." "You can," Elon said firmly. "You've given me more than you realize." Sam hesitated before slipping the envelope into his pocket. "Then I'll use it to help others, like you're doing." As Elon drove away that night, he felt lighter, as if a weight he hadn't known he'd been carrying had finally lifted. He realized that true success wasn't measured by stock prices or technological achievements, but by the lives he touched along the way. He thought about Sam's words, the conversations that had changed him, and the decision that had felt like a leap of faith. He smiled, knowing this was just the beginning of a new journey, one guided by purpose, connection, and a deeper understanding of what it truly meant to lead. Years later, during an interview, a journalist asked Elon, "What's the greatest achievement of your career?" Elon paused, his mind drifting back to the park bench, the weathered sign, and the man who had taught him to see the world differently. "Learning to listen," he replied with a quiet smile, "and remembering that the best way to move forward is together."